Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're embarking on a journey, really digging into the hidden stories and, the natural wonders of Flandrau State Park down in south central Minnesota.
Yeah, and for those of you listening who really enjoy finding new places, uncovering the tales they hold, well, this one's definitely for you.
We really do love that part. So, to understand Flandrau, we've looked at quite a mix of things.
Oh, yeah. We've got personal blog posts, actual park maps, some solid historical records, news articles, and even dug into some online forum chats to see what people are saying.
It's quite the collection. It helps build a fuller picture, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It lets us piece together a really comprehensive view of this pretty fascinating park.
Okay, so our mission today is to, get beyond just the surface level of Flandrau, look at its past, its highlights, and maybe uncover some of those captivating details that make it stand out.
Sounds good.
All right, Flandrau State Park. Where does the story really begin? What's the starting point?
Well, like a lot of places, it starts with the name. What we now call Flandrau State Park. It was originally Cottonwood River State Park.
Cottonwood River State Park. Okay.
And it didn't get renamed until 1945. That's when they decided to honor Charles Eugene Flandreau.
Charles Flandreau. Now, that name rings a bell in Minnesota history. Remind us, why is he significant?
Right. Flandreau was, well, he was a really key figure back in Minnesota's early days. He was involved in drafting the Minnesota Constitution, which is pretty foundational stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also during the U.S.-Dakota War of 1862, which was a very difficult time, he organized volunteers and actually led the defense of New Ulm against Dakota attacks.
So he was seen as crucial for protecting those early settlers in the area.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A major figure in shaping the state and defending its communities. It gives the park's name some real historical weight, you know?
It really does. But the park's history doesn't stop there,
Yeah.
right? There's that whole World War II connection I remember reading about, the POW camp.
That's right. It's quite a turn. In the 1940s, near the end of the war, part of Flandreau actually became Camp New Ulm. It was a prisoner of war camp holding German soldiers.
Wow. From state park beginnings to a POW camp. It's pretty striking to think a place we now associate with hiking and swimming once held soldiers from a world war.
It really is.
So thinking about that location, what about the park's geography? Is there anything about its setting that kind of lends itself to these different uses?
Geographically, Flandreau is in south central Minnesota, right next to New Ulm in Brown County. And interestingly, part of the park is actually inside the New Ulm city limits.
Oh, really? So it blurs that line between town and nature.
It does. And the main feature, naturally, is the Cottonwood River. It flows east right through the park, carving the landscape. People often describe it as a really scenic prairie river.
And it's not just flat prairie around the river, is it? The sources mentioned some pretty dramatic terrain.
Oh, definitely not flat. Along the river valley, you get these quite steep wooded slopes. They create a really nice visual contrast. And these slopes support cool, moist forests. You'll find oak-shaded bluffs. But what's really interesting are these little pockets of dry prairie knolls mixed in.
Dry prairie knolls.
Yeah, sometimes called goat prairies.
Yeah.
They're on the rockier, steeper bits where, maybe only goats could easily graze back in the day. Adds another layer of ecological diversity.
Goat prairies, I like that. And besides the main river, there are those oxbow lakes mentioned too. Sounds like more water features.
Yes, exactly. Marshy oxbow lakes. They're basically old channels where the Cottonwood River used to flow. They show how the river's path has shifted over, well, a very long time.
Geological history right there.
Absolutely. And speaking of geology, the river's cut quite a valley. It's gone through glacial till that's the mix of rocks and sediment left by glaciers.
Right.
And even down into older Cretaceous bedrock. We're talking layers of stone formed millions of years ago.
Oh, wow.
And there's even some, geological whispers about a possible former waterfall along the river way back before erosion smoothed it out into rapids.
A prehistoric waterfall. That kind of detail really adds depth. Okay, shifting gears a bit for people who love the living landscape. What about plants and animals at Flandreau?
The plant life is really varied because the habitats are varied. You've got the wooded river bottoms, those oxbow marshes we mentioned, open grasslands, and the goat prairies.
Lots of different zones.
Right. And keep an eye out for the small white lady slipper. It's a delicate native orchid, pretty special to find. The floodplain forests along the river are also really key habitats.
And the fauna. What creatures might you actually see?
Well, bird watching is definitely a highlight. Broad-winged hawks nest there. You might spot the bright blue of indigo buntings or the orange of northern orioles.
Nice.
Kingfishers zip along the river, hummingbirds, bluebirds, lots of woodpeckers too. And bigger animals, white-tailed deer, pretty common. You'll likely see turtles near the water.
Sounds like a good spot for birders.
For sure. The park even has a bird checklist you can grab, tells you what's common, uncommon, occasional, or rare. And we shouldn't forget the pollinators, bees, butterflies, they're crucial, supported by all the native wildflowers, really important for the whole ecosystem.
It definitely sounds like an immersive natural place. So if people are inspired to visit, how can they actually get involved, actively engage with it all?
Well, the big one in summer is the swimming pond. It's got a sand bottom. And it's important, like some sources point out, this is separate from the river. It's chlorinated, so it's a controlled swimming area.
Safe swimming. Good to know.
Yeah, and when it's open, there are lifeguards and rules posted. Plus, for some fun on the side, you can usually borrow volleyballs or cornhole sets from the park office.
Perfect for a family day out. What about exploring on foot?
Hiking is huge there. There's an 8-mile trail system. The Oxbow Trail is a really nice 1-mile self-guided loop. Tells you about the natural features as you go.
Interpretive trail. Cool.
Yeah. And lots of others. Grassland, Ridge, Indian Point, Bluebird, Spring, Cottonwood, River, Woodland, Pool, Old Island Loop, Old Dam Trail. Lots to choose from.
Quite a network. Any good views?
Oh, yes. Several trails have designated overlooks Indian Point, the Grassland Loop, Cottonwood River Loop. They offer some really nice panoramic views. And if you're doing the statewide hiking club thing, Flandrau has a trail for that where you find the password signs.
Ah, the hiking club trail. Good for folks collecting those.
Yeah.
Is it just a warm weather park, though? We saw notes about winter, too.
Nope, definitely year-round potential. Come winter, it's great for cross-country skiing and snowshoeing. They often have rentals available, too.
Oh, convenient.
And this is important, some of those hiking trails get groomed specifically for skiing in winter. When that happens, they're closed to hikers to protect the tracks. So you need to check the conditions.
Good heads up. Respect the grooming. What else? Any other ways to enjoy the park?
Fishing's allowed in the milder months. Lots of picnic spots, like 60 sites. Plus, there's an enclosed shelter down by the beach house.
Shelter's handy.
Yeah. And they replaced the old playground with a nature playground. Sounds pretty cool. With things like a playboat and a mud kitchen. Encourages more imaginative play.
Nice touch.
Geocaching is still popular there, even though one specific cache mentioned in a source is archived now. And of course, just finding a quiet bench for some wildlife watching is always great.
It really sounds like it was developed thoughtfully, offering a lot of different things. Okay, let's circle back to the history. We touched on the POW camp, but tell us more about the earlier development during the Depression.
Right. So the land was actually bought back in 1934. This was peak Great Depression time. And the idea was partly unemployment relief. The development was a massive project undertaken by the CCC, Civilian Conservation Corps, and the WPA, the Works Progress Administration.
The New Deal programs, they left such a mark everywhere. What's their specific legacy at Flandrau?
It's really visible in the architecture. They built in this distinctive rustic style. But what's particularly interesting at Flandrau is how the design deliberately nods to the German heritage of New Ulm, the nearby city.
Ah, so the buildings themselves reflect the local culture. That's fascinating.
Exactly. You see it in things like the steeply pitched roofs, the dormers, the big chimneys, casement windows with lots of small panes. And the stonework they used, native quartzite, laid in this sort of nonlinear, very textured way.
Local materials, local style.
Precisely. The beach house is probably the star example. It's actually one of the largest New Deal structures in the whole Minnesota State Park system. And those German architectural influences are really clear.
Wow. A major structure. What else did the CCC and WPA build there?
Besides the beach house, which was a combination building with the shelter and concession, they built the park manager's house, a garage, a kitchen shelter, barracks, latrines, an office building, even smaller things like the entrance portals, a stone drinking fountain, a check dam on the river to control flow, and lots of stone steps on the trails.
They were busy. And those barracks you mentioned, those are the same buildings that became Camp New Ulm later.
Yes, exactly. The group center complex, originally built as WPA barracks, was repurposed from 1944 to 1945 to house about 160 German POWs, mostly Luftwaffe, Air Force guys.
It's just incredible to think about that transition. Buildings meant for park workers or visitors becoming a wartime camp. What do we know about the POWs' lives there?
Well, most were young airmen. There was a small group of U.S. Army guards, and the fact that New Ulm had such a large German-speaking population made it unique. Reports suggest many locals were somewhat sympathetic.
How did that play out?
The POWs often worked outside the camp in canneries, factories, on farms. They got paid a small amount. And despite rules against it, interactions happened.
Really? Like what?
Locals sometimes left food near the camp fence. Workers might share treats. German-speaking clergy came in for services and brought books. POWs working on farms often ate meals with the farm families.
A bit of human connection even then.
Yeah. And for recreation, they had a clubhouse, a sports field. They could swim and fish in designated spots. They got newspapers, radios, saw movies weekly, and apparently the locals helped organize Sunday concerts for them.
It paints a surprisingly complex picture. What happened to the camp after the war?
Camp New Ulm closed in December 1945. The POWs were sent back to Germany eventually. But the buildings, they're still there. The site is now the park's group center.
Still in use.
Still in use, which makes it pretty rare, a WWII POW campsite in the U.S. that's still actively used today. If the group center isn't booked, you can often ask at the park office to walk around the grounds. It's a tangible piece of history. And importantly, all these CCCC WPA structures, including the camp area, are listed on the National Register of Historic Places. They're recognized as significant.
Okay, so beyond the history and the nature, what are the practical things people need to know if they're planning a visit? The nuts and bolts.
Right. First stop, probably the park office to grab a paper map. Always handy. There's a large parking area. For facilities, you've got basic primitive toilets, but also modern restrooms and showers in that big beach house building, which campers can use.
What about camping options?
Pretty diverse. There are electric sites, non-electric sites, both called semi-modern. Then there are rustic drive-in sites, and even 3 rustic walk-in sites for a bit more seclusion.
And the group center we talked about.
That historic group center, yeah, it sleeps up to 96 people in 8 bunkhouses, has a dining hall with a kitchen, modern bathrooms. It's available to rent from June through mid-September, usually. Reservations are definitely needed for campsites and the group center, and there's a phone number for that.
Good to know. Permits, hours.
Yep. You need a vehicle permit daily or annual. You can buy them at the park HQ or online beforehand. Park hours are 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. daily.
What about pets? And firewood?
Pets are welcome, but need to be on a 6-foot leash, attended, kept quiet, and they aren't allowed in buildings or the pool area. Standard rules, mostly. Firewood's important. You have to buy it either in the park or from specific approved local vendors to prevent invasive species spread.
Right, the firewood roll. Anything else useful at the office?
Yeah, you can often borrow things like birding kits or kids' discovery kits. Worth asking about.
Okay, sounds like they make it pretty easy to visit. What about things around the park? Anything nearby worth checking out?
Definitely. Being right next to New Ulm is a plus. Shell's Brewery is a big one. It's the second oldest family-owned brewery in the U.S., started way back in 1860.
Wow, historic brewery too.
Yeah, they do tours. The grounds are beautiful. They have a beer garden, a brat stand, classic New Ulm experience, and they have a big Oktoberfest celebration every year.
Might be a good time to visit.
Could be. And speaking of timing, if you're thinking fall colors, check the DNR's Fall Color Finder online. Mid-October is often peak time around there. Also, right near the park entrance are Nels City Park, the New Ulm Country Club, which is private, the Herman Heights Monument, you get great views from there, and Martin Luther College.
Plenty to make a full day or weekend trip. Okay, before we wrap up, any final warnings or important things for visitors to just keep in mind?
Yeah, a few key reminders. The Cottonwood River itself isn't recommended for swimming or wading. If you do bring a boat or canoe, you absolutely need to check for invasive species before you put it in and after you take it out.
Crucial.
Be aware of hunting seasons if they overlap with your visit. Wear bright colors if you're hiking then. Always stay on the marked trails. That protects the park. Practice. Leave no trace. Pack it in. Pack it out. Leave it better than you found it. And just be aware of the usual outdoor stuff like deer ticks and poison ivy. Know what to look for.
Standard outdoor smarts. Good reminders. Flandrau State Park really does seem like this compelling mix, doesn't it? You've got the natural beauty, the river valley, the prairies.
Right. And then layered on top is this incredibly rich history, the namesake story, the CCC and WPA architecture reflecting local heritage, and then that unexpected chapter as a World War II POW camp.
Plus all the recreational opportunities now. Hiking, swimming, camping.
Exactly. It really drives home how these places, even ones that feel primarily local, can hold these deep layers of history, state, national, even international connections, just waiting for us to uncover them.
Which leads perfectly into our final thought for you today. Thinking about Flandrau, maybe take a moment to consider the seemingly ordinary places around you. What surprising stories might be hiding just beneath the surface? Perhaps it's time for your own deep dive into a place you thought you knew.
A great challenge.
Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.